The ending of Squid Game sparks a lot of controversy. Many loved Gi-hun's symbolic death, but others hated this decision. To further fuel the debate, the series director recently stated that the original ending was going to be very different. Gi-hun's fate was not to die in the grand finale. That was added during production. I'll tell you everything here. Welcome to Squidflix. Today, I'm going to tell you the true ending of Squid Game Season 3. Ready? Let's begin. Recently, Netflix released a special video in which the director of the series, Hwang Dong-hyuk, spoke. This special lasts half an hour and you can watch it on your Netflix accounts. In that video, the director is asked what he thinks of the ending we saw, and he confirms that things were going to be very different. According to him, in the original ending, Gi-hun won the games and left the island. Then, he went to the United States to find his daughter and join her. Basically, the director tells us that Gi-hun was meant to take the frontman's place in the final scenes. The director also confirms that Gi-hun was going to be the one who would meet the American recruiter. Gi-hun would have been confident, living a happy life, but his peace would have been shattered when he discovered the games were still happening around the world. In other words, the original ending resembled a bit what we saw at the end of Season 1 with Gi-hun at the airport. But why was this ending rejected? According to the director, the main reason is that, in his view, Gi-hun's journey was already over after 3 seasons. The protagonist had already lived many adventures and faced the harsh realities of human nature. Gi-hun saved people, made mistakes, and even killed with his own hands. At that point, the best way to close his story was to sacrifice his life for someone innocent like the baby. The director thus says Gi-hun's story was finished. There was no point in dragging it out any further. Taking advantage of the interview, the director also explained exactly what the ending we saw in the series means. The idea was to send a message about humanity. That's why Gi-hun says an incomplete sentence before dying. In his final scene he says, "We are not horses, we are human beings." And human beings are. According to the director, the sentence remains unfinished because there is no single word to define human beings. Humans are complex. So, it would have been presumptuous for Gi-hun to try to define them in his last sentence. The goal was for us, as the audience, to complete the sentence with what we had learned throughout the series. Over the course of the 3 seasons, we saw all the facets of humanity, from the softest to the darkest. We saw revenge, ambition, and cruelty, but also hope. The director wanted all these emotions to culminate in Gi-hun's final sentence so that everyone could find their own answer in it. From the character's point of view, Gi-hun left the sentence unfinished for an important reason. He wanted to send a message to the frontmen and the VIPs. But this message could not be expressed with words, only with actions. That's why he sacrificed his life for the baby just before finishing his sentence. To him, that was the strongest response. The human being has value and can give his life for others. That's not something that can be said. It must be proven. There is no greater love than the one of someone who gives their life for another. For Gi-hun, that was his answer, and it's up to each of us to find our own. I understand that all this may seem ambiguous and unsatisfying to the audience. Many wanted more concrete answers and less symbolism. In fact, in the same interview, actor Lee Young-jae explains that he had a hard time understanding the emotions of the scene and didn't know how to interpret them correctly. For example, they filmed several versions of the fall. In some, Gi-hun was crying, but ultimately those takes were discarded and they kept the ones we saw in the episode. According to the director, there was no correct emotion. Everything was left to the audience's interpretation. That was the goal, and that's why they chose that ending. In summary, that's the explanation of the ending according to the director, who also explains why he rejected a more classic ending in which Gi-hun would have been happy with his daughter. That would have been a more common ending, even satisfying for the public. Thanks to Hollywood cinema, we are more used to having clear answers, happy or sad endings, but at least an ending. In contrast, Korean directing style is more subtle and leaves a lot of ambiguity for us to interpret ourselves. That may frustrate some, and it shows, because millions of fans were disappointed by the ending. If you ask me, the ideal ending would have been for Gi-hun to die, but to at least leave a letter to his daughter. In that letter, he could have apologized for never coming to get her. That would have closed his story with his daughter without erasing his sacrifice. Back to the main topic, there are many reasons why the ending with Gi-hun in the United States was rejected. But for me, the main reason is that it would have unnecessarily prolonged his story. If Gi-hun had discovered the American recruiter, he would have realized the games continued worldwide. And Gi-hun is not a character who would stay quiet after learning such a thing. He would have done everything to stop them. That would have been very repetitive for the franchise. It wouldn't make sense to see Gi-hun participate in the game again. Currently, everything suggests the franchise plans to continue the story in the United States. It's not 100% confirmed, but the clues point in that direction. So logically, they would need protagonists from that country. That would bring a fresh breath to the franchise. Another detail, prolonging Gi-hun's story would be very bad for his character development. Gi-hun has learned a lot since Season 1. His path has been painful and complicated, but despite everything, he matured and was able to conclude his story. Making him act again in a 4th season would be very difficult to write. Even for actor Lee Young-jae, filming the last season was very hard. In the same interview, we learn he followed a strict diet for an entire year to look thinner and weakened. And during filming, he had to restrict himself even more. The actor said it cost him a lot emotionally. During meals, he couldn't eat with the team. He had to go to his car to eat his dietary meals. That saddened him because he couldn't share those moments with his colleagues. With all this context and the director's statements, we can guess that no one wanted Gi-hun to be the protagonist again. So there are many arguments to explain why the director rejected the ending with Gi-hun in the US. But who could we see in the American spin-off? I think several Korean characters could return. The most obvious would be the frontman. That character changed with Gi-hun's sacrifice. That's why he took care of the baby for 6 months. He regained faith in humanity. I can't say he became totally good, but he changed. The frontman could be an excellent support for the next protagonist of the franchise. I don't imagine him as the main character in the US. I think they're saving that option for a possible Squid Game prequel. For a while now, people have been talking about a prequel telling how the frontman won the games. By the way, in the interview, the director mentions it but says it's too early to confirm anything. Another character who could return is Gi-hun's daughter. She could be a player in the next American games. Many even think she could be the protagonist, seeking answers about her father. Honestly, I doubt that a lot. We can see the production did everything to close Gi-hun's story. They want to move on, and reopening that chapter would be repetitive. I think Gi-hun's daughter might reappear but in a very minor role. There might be references to Gi-hun's sacrifice. But the new series will move away from the main storyline. In any case, Squid Game ended with a controversial ending. Some will love it, others won't. But the important thing is that we will still get a lot from this franchise in the future. That's all for today. If you liked the video, it would help me a lot if you left a like. That would be legendary.